Oh, that's recording. The camera kept falling over. Hello. I like to read to my kids because my mum always read to me. I am talking about these books from a homeschool mum read aloud perspective, but even if I wasn't a homeschool mum, I would still have read these to my children probably. My mum didn't read me Jacqueline Wilson, but Jacqueline Wilson was one of the first authors that I read independently. I was reading Jacqueline Wilson books myself from about 10 or 11. And Jacqueline Wilson has been amazing. But I'm talking to you today about the Hetty Feather books. There's 5 in the series. When I first thought about reading my kids Hetty Feather, I wasn't sure what order the books was in or what was in the books. So I went on a homeschool page on Facebook and asked what order they was in. And I found that helpful when other mothers told me what order they was in and if there was any good. So I'm just going to tell you my thoughts on them. I'll give you a very, very brief overview of what's in them and what order they're in. From a homeschool perspective, they was very helpful because it was entertaining, but also it's like a guided tour through Victorian England. These books touch on the Foundling Hospital for abandoned children, which was a real place, the workhouse, going into service, Victorian freak shows, Victorian seaside, Victorian circus, the differences between the rich and the poor, old-fashioned language like privy instead of toilet and drawers instead of knickers and things like that, education, fisher girls, what happened to you when you was old, just consumption, all kinds of things like history things they touch upon. And because they're entertaining, your children are learning, but not in an obvious way. They don't know they're learning, if you know what I mean. So just if when I hold the book up, if the cover's shiny, because sometimes it is and you can't see it properly, don't worry, because at the end I'm going to lay them all out on the bed and I'll show you them properly, they're covered. They did do a television series of Hetty Feather. A lot of people really like it, so don't let my opinion put you off. A lot of people really like it, and I don't think we properly gave it a chance. We might give it another go, but because we was reading the books, my children wanted to try the television series, and we only watched 2 episodes because my kids didn't like it because it wasn't like the books. And all Jacqueline Wilson's main girl characters are always fiery, and Hetty Feather's no exception. She's fiery, but she's likeable, and we didn't think the girl in the television series was likeable. We thought she was obnoxious. But like I say, we only watched 2 episodes, didn't get a proper chance, and a lot of people like the television series. But these are the books. So the first one, Hetty Feather, goes from Hetty Feather being born and being given away to the Foundling Hospital for abandoned children or children of mothers that weren't married. And she sent it as a little baby. She sent in a basket with her foster brother Gideon on a train to the countryside to a foster mother. To be fattened up, basically, because this woman's very good at fattening up the weak babies and making them thrive. And they live in the countryside till she's 5. And while she's there, one of her brothers, well, the foster brother, he's the son of the foster mother. He's called Jem, and they're really, really close, and they play lots of games together about the one day they're going to get married. And he promises her when she goes back to the Foundling Hospital, I will come for you, and one day we will get married. But while she's in the countryside, the circus comes, and her and Jem, because they haven't got no money, they wait until the circus has started, and then they nip under the big top flaps and get in for nothing. And there's a beautiful lady in red hair, just like Hetty Feather's got red hair, Madame Adeline, riding a horse in a horse act, and Hetty Feather loves her and gets it into her head that this must be her real mother, and that never leaves her head. And then when she's 5, she goes back to the Foundling Hospital, and it's a bit harsh because they take a foster mother dresses her in her Sunday best and takes her a little ragdoll baby, and they take her Sunday best and her ragdoll and burn it, and then they cut all her hair off in case she's got lice or nits and that, and then they put her in a brown scratchy Foundling uniform, and she has to go there, and basically they're training them up to be servants. They do lots and lots of darning, lots of scrubbing, bit of reading and writing, but Hetty Feather's good at reading and writing, and when she gets to a certain stage in it, they stop teaching you anymore, because they think you don't need, you've learned to read and write, you don't need a better education than that, because you're only going to be a servant. And she's very unhappy there. But as we was reading it, I kept saying to the kids, she is unhappy, but at least she's learned to read and write, which a lot of children didn't then. And at least she's clothed and she's fed, which a lot of children were so poor they weren't even being fed then. And at least they're training up to go in service, and so she might not want to be a servant, but being a servant was a good deal then, because you was paid, you had somewhere to live, you had food, which during Victorian England that was a good deal. But then on Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, they let the foundling hospital go to the park to enjoy the celebrations, and Hetty Feather runs away. She sees the circus in a field a bit further beyond, and on a whim she just runs away to find Madame Adeline, because she's still convinced Madame Adeline's a mother. So she runs away, finds Madame Adeline. Madame Adeline's ever so nice, but she says, I'm not your mother, I can't have children. I'm going to take you back to the foundling hospital. So Hetty Feather doesn't want to go back to the foundling hospital, so she panics and she runs away again. And she ends up meeting these two children who sell flowers on the streets of London. Neither of them can read and write. One of them's dying of consumption. The father's a drunk. They share one toilet with the whole street. They rent one room that's damp and mouldy. And Hetty Feather realises that maybe things weren't as bad at the hospital. But she's still adamant that she can make it on her own. She's going to stay with this flower girl. But then one of the governors of the hospital, Miss Sarah Smith, finds her and takes her back to the hospital. And she goes back to the hospital, and then she realises that the kitchen maid at the hospital, who is always very nice to her, always gives her a little extra, you know, at meal time, so that is actually her mother. And she's so happy to actually find her real mother. And you could get away with just reading the first one, or you could just read the first three if you didn't want to read the whole set. But that's the first book. So she's gone back to the foundling hospital, she's found her mother, and that's the end of the first book. And she's about 10, I think, at the end of the first book. The second book is Sophia Battersea. She finds out that Hetty Feather is the name that the foundling hospital gave her, but she finds out the name that her mother would have given her was Sapphire, because she's got really blue eyes. So when she leaves the foundling hospital, she thinks, right, I'm going to call myself Sophia Battersea like my mum would have wanted. Because at the beginning of the book, her and her mum are caught seeing each other. Hetty Feather sneaks up to her mum's room, because her mum's a servant there, and they get caught. Mum gets sacked because no one was supposed to know that she was a real mother, or they'd never have employed her. And then Hetty Feather turns 14, and she leaves the hospital to start a job in service, and there's a young man waiting for her at the gates, and it's only after she's gone past him that she realises it might have been Jem. Jem might have come and got her like he always said he'd come and get her. So she writes him a letter, and it turns out it was Jem, and they start writing to each other. But while she's in service as a kitchen maid, and she has to sleep in the kitchen because she's a kitchen maid, for a Mr. Buchanan, she's underneath Mrs. Brisket, who's the housekeeper, and the maid called Sarah, and they're strict with her, but they're very nice, and she's got it quite good there. And on the Sundays off, this butcher's boy, who's come out of the workhouse but now he works at the butcher's, takes her out on a Sunday, and they start becoming, you know, sweethearts. But then Mr. Buchanan, who she works for, gets Hetty to help him writing. He writes stories, and her handwriting's better than his, so he gets her to write out some of the stories. And she says, I've been writing my memoirs, would you have a look? And he has a look, says that they're unprintable, nobody'd ever print them. But then it turns out he's stealing ideas out of her memoirs for his new book, and Hetty just goes off on one, loses her temper, she gets the sack, nobody believes her because he's rich and she's poor, that he's been stealing her ideas out of her memoirs. So she goes and says bye-bye to Bertie, and then she says, I'm going to go find my mother. So she goes and finds her mum, but when she finds her mum, she realises how ill her mum is. Her mum's working as a maid for this old lady who can't see very well, and she's dying of consumption. And Hetty goes and gets the doctor, thinking that she's helping, but the doctor just puts her in a sanitarium to, like, because she's going to die, basically. Hetty can't leave the seaside, Bignor. while her mum's dying, she wants to stay near her. So what she does is she gets a job in a freak show. She makes a mermaid's outfit and gets a job in a freak show. And she shares a room with a giant called Frida, who probably isn't a giant. She's probably how big like normal people are now. But like I said to the kids, in them days there weren't as good nutrition and people were a lot smaller. So, and then her mum dies, and she goes back to Mrs. Brisket, and she's thinking, I don't know what to do, and then she thinks, oh, I'll go find my father, and that's the end of that book. The third book is Emerald Star. She goes to find her father. She goes to the fishing village of Monksby, and it talks a little bit about how the fisher people would have worked then, would have lived then. Like you had the fishermen, and then their wives would gut the fish and sell the fish, and the girls and the children would get the bait, catch the fish and all that. She goes to find father, finds him, but when she gets there she gives a false name where she's staying, because Emerald Star, because she's not sure with how the land lays with her father. But she finds father, and he's very nice, and he embraces her and wants her, but her father's new wife, Catherine, and his new children don't like her, don't want to accept her. She does her best to settle in, but she just doesn't fit. And she's wondering what to do. And then Jem writes to her and says that their foster father's died. So she makes the decision to go back to Jem for the foster father's funeral. And she goes back, and she's a bit upset because her foster, Jem's big sisters are all like, oh, what are you doing here? You weren't family, you were just one of the foundling children. But Jem's very happy to see her. The foster mother's had a stroke. So after the funeral, Hetty stays on to look after the foster mother with Jem. And Jem's still got it in his head they're going to get married. They've had this understanding since they were little they were going to get married. And she kind of plays along with it for a bit, but then it turns out he's got a friend called Janet who really loves Jem, and she's a bit more suited to him, I think. But he wants Hetty. And then Gideon, her foster brother, who was put in the army when he left the foundling hospital, comes back, and he's all wounded and he's had a terrible time. And he's really close to the foster mother, and she starts thinking he could look after the foster mother, and Janet should be with Jem. I don't want to upset Janet. And right, we was enjoying the book, but we put the book down and we read something else because it was looking like she wasn't going to marry Jem, and we was all distraught that she wasn't going to marry Jem. We'd all been rooting for her to marry Jem from day one, and we was all really upset she wasn't going to marry Jem. So we put it down and read something else, and then we come back to it, and the circus comes to town. And she goes to the circus, sees Madame Adeline, decides that if she leaves, Jem will realise that he wants to marry Janet, and Janet's better suited to him than she is. So she makes a ringmaster's outfit, gets the job in the circus, and it ends with her leaving Jem and coming to the circus with her suitcase. And that's the end of that book. The fourth book in the series is the only one that's not Hetty speaking. It's somebody called Diamond speaking, but Diamond can't read and write, and she says in the book that Hetty's writing it down for her, and Diamond is the shortest book in the series. Beanie didn't like the beginning of the book. He didn't like it until like a third through it when Hetty comes into it. But I think that's because the beginning of the book's quite sad. Diamond's a little girl. I think she's the fifth child or the fourth child, I can't remember. Her dad's a drunk, and her mum's got mental health problems, let's say. And her mum's obsessed with the idea that she needs another child, even though the midwife has said to her, it will kill you. She's obsessed with the fact she needs another child, she needs another boy. She has another child, and she dies. And the three older sons are all apprenticed off to because the father's having a tough time paying for them all, so he apprentices them off. One goes to work at the fishmongers and live there, one goes to work at the undertakers and live there, and the other one goes somewhere else, lives somewhere else, I can't remember where. And the oldest daughter, Mary Martha, has to stay at home and look after the baby and Diamond. And sometimes the father goes off for weeks and weeks and weeks, leaves them with no money, and they can't afford food and things. So Diamond, who's always had a bit of a talent for acrobatics, you know, handstands, cartwheeling, doing the crab, goes to perform in the street. And she's a street performer and people throw her pennies. Her dad hasn't liked her since her mother died, because when her mother died, giving birth, he was in the pub getting drunk, and Diamond was with him, so he blames her, which is completely unfair, and I think that's why Bean didn't like the beginning of the book. This clown from the circus, Beppo, he sees her performing and he buys her off her father for 5 guineas, and which is terrible in itself. And he takes her back to the circus, and it's the same circus that's been in the books all along, the one with Madame Madeline in. And Madame Madeline's lovely to her, gives her cake, tells her that if Beppo's being too hard on her to come to her and stuff like that. But Beppo trains her and trains her and trains her, and he forces her to do more and more dangerous tricks as part of this show in the circus. And sometimes he beats her. And then Hetty comes into it when she gets the job as the ringmaster, and there is a little bit where it overlaps, where the bit where she gets the ringmaster job in this and this, it overlaps. And she becomes friends with Diamond. And Madame Madeline leaves because her and Mr. Marvel and Monkey Man are sacked because they're getting too old. Because the man in charge of the circus is quite harsh. So Hetty and Diamond find themselves on their own in the circus, and they end up running away. And they run away, and they make it to the nearest town, and they see a poster on a wall advertising a music hall, and one of the acts is Flirty Bertie. And Hetty remembers that when she used to go on her Sunday outings with Bertie the butcher's boy, he always said, "Oh, I really want to be a musical artist, I want to call myself Flirty Bertie." And she thinks, "Is that my Bertie?" And she says to Diamond, "We're going to be music hall artists." And that's the end of the book. And this is the last book, Little Stars, and it's a mega book, look, it's huge. So, Hetty and Diamond have it starts off, they've ran away, they've nowhere to go. By chance, because Hetty always seems to land on her feet, people like her and help her. By chance, because Hetty's really good at sewing, because she learnt to sew at the Foundling Hospital, she gets a job in a dressmaker's, Miss Gibson's, during the day, sewing all day so that her and Diamond can sleep in the room upstairs. And they audition to get a job at the music hall, but then they realise, the woman says no, and they realise that the music hall is what they call the den of iniquity, and they need a better act. And they find Bertie. Bertie helps them get a better act, and they get a job at the music hall, and they're a big hit. Pardon me, massive hit. Jem gets married to Janet, and there's a little bit where he's saying to Hetty, "I still love you," and she's like, no, you've got to marry Janet, and she marries Janet, so it's a bit more grown up, this one. But then she comes back, her and Bertie are sweethearts, he gives her like a promised love ring, and then she decides that she wants, these actors come to the music hall and put on a little play, and she decides that she actually wants to be an actress. And my oldest, Gabriel, who was always on the top bunk when I'm reading, says, "Why can't she just settle on one thing? Why can't she be happy with what she's got?" And I could see his point. She does jump from one thing to the other, but if she just settled in one thing, that would have been the end of the book, wouldn't it? And there wouldn't have been a whole series. And I said to him, sometimes it takes people a while to find what they want to do. So yeah, she decides she wants to be an actress, and she gets a little part in one of their plays. But then this man who helps run the music hall forces his son on her, tries to kiss her and rips the front of her frock, and she gets the blame and she gets the sack. And she says to Diamond, "We're going to have to run away, because if Bertie finds out, he'll have a fight with this man and he'll get in trouble and he'll get sacked as well." So they decide to run away. But then the next morning, the woman who, one of the actresses out of this actors group says, we've heard that you've been sacked from the music hall, come with us, come to London with us, you can act with us. So they go off with them. They're rehearsing for a new play. Hetty and Diamond have the day off, so they go and visit Madame Adeline because she's not been writing to him very much since she went to live with Mr. Marvel. Go find Madame Adeline. She looks very old and thin. Mr. Marvel's died, and the monkeys, most of the monkeys have died apart from one. She's very upset. And Hetty says, you're going to come live with us. So they bring Madame Adeline back home to live with them, and already Madame Adeline's looking much better. And because the woman whose lodgings are staying at becomes friends with Madame Adeline as well, they have this big opening night for this new play that she's doing with these actors, and Madame Adeline's there and her new friends are there, and then at the end Bertie shows up. He's found her, and Bertie says, I'm going to try my music. I found out what happened to you. I did get in a fight with him that upset you. I got the sack. I had my 2 front teeth knocked out, so I'm not going to be Flirty Bertie anymore. I'm going to be the gappy chappy, and I'm going to get a job in the music hall in London. I'll not be as successful as you, but we'll both be happy, we'll both be successful. Am I still your sweetheart? And she says yes. And Bertie comes and lives with them in another room at the lodgings. So it ends with them all living together, and everybody's happy, everybody's found what they want to do, and it's a really nice ending. So yeah, they're the 5 books. And it is a tour through Victorian London. Victorian London? Yes, Victorian. I'm going to show you the books now in order. So we've got Hetty Feather, that's the first book, where she's from birth to 10. Sapphire Battersea, which is like she's just 14, I think. It covers 6 months, I think that one does. Emerald Star, I think she's 15 at the end of this one. Diamond, which covers Diamond from birth till about 8 or 9. And then Little Stars, and it ends in Hetty's 16, I think. And it has a nice ending. So sorry I've rattled on a bit, but they're the books. We found them worthwhile, educational and entertaining, and I'm going to keep them on my bookshelf.